What is the world that we live in? Some people have said it's like a great machine, or it is a big watch that has been set by a watchmaker. But what if the world is actually a game? This week on Board Game Faith, the bi-weekly podcast on the intersection of religion, spirituality, and board games. Button.
Hello and welcome, dear listeners. We're so glad to have you joining us today.
Hello.
My name's Daniel Hilty.
My name's Kevin Taylor, and we are talking this week about Jürgen Moltmann, and this is part two. So we did a prior episode about his theology of play, and we got up through about page 14. Is that right?
I think so. It is a wonderful and thick with meaning, dense book. And so, yeah, I just the first 14 pages took quite a while to talk about last time.
Yeah, he's obviously well read and is moving through lots of different ideas, and some of them are a little dated at this point, so you have to do a little work to figure out who he's arguing with and what kind of fights he's trying to pick. So yeah, it's given us a lot of great material and provoked some thoughts. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Kevin, it occurs to me, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but for listeners who might be tuning in to this episode before hearing the first episode about Jürgen Moltmann, might be helpful just to talk a little bit about who is this guy, Jürgen Moltmann, right? Yeah.
Hey, Daniel.
So,
Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Who is this
Kevin.
guy? Hey. Who's that cat?
Yeah. Jürgen Moltmann is a very prominent Christian theologian, Protestant Christian theologian out of Germany, of the 20th century and the 21st century as well. We mentioned the last episode that I think we were both we didn't realize that he was still alive, and he's I think he's well into his 90s, but still alive, and I think most people would agree, at least here in the Western, one of the most prominent and well-known living theologians in the Christian tradition today.
He's a Protestant, right? He is.
Yep.
He's Lutheran, I guess we would say, right?
I think that's probably right. Yeah. What we maybe could call the evangelical church in Germany.
Right.
But yeah. And he's written far and wide on all sorts of theological topics. But one of his writings that is especially relevant to this podcast, but also especially hard to find, is a little book, almost kind of extended manuscript titled Theology of Play. Theology of Play.
Right.
And so we're going through this on multiple episodes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if you are interested in reading this, it's not in print anymore, but if you go to a library, especially university, or there might be a seminary or some kind of religious institution, or even a church might have this on a bookshelf. It's the kind of thing that probably got printed and had a print run and was distributed and just never gained traction. So, but it's not in the public domain yet. So you're not able to just read it for free as a PDF, unless it's some dark part of the dark web.
Right. Which we don't
has
necessarily
Daniel's
recommend.
credit card. Daniel's still trying to get his Amex account closed. Thank you, hackers.
And yet it's a very well-known book. I was surprised.
Is it? I never heard of it.
More than I thought. Yeah. At the last, in the last episode, we talked about this retreat that I got to be a part of out in Colorado about spirituality and play. And one of the participants there said, "Oh yeah, I'm still trying to find a copy of Jürgen Moltmann's Theology of Play." And then another participant who was within earshot, she said, "Yes, I've been trying to find Jürgen Moltmann's Theology of Play." And so, at least in the right circles, in certain circles, it's almost kind of like the holy grail of theological treatises on the theology of play. That and Mr. Bean's big happy playtime book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Daniel's memoirs, volume 1, A Softly Moving Wind. Which he doesn't explain the title till the very end.
You have to slog through the first 500 pages, and then you get to a softly
moving wind
through my head. That's right, just echoing through the great empty chasms of my head.
Right.
So anyway, so that's Theology of Play, and that's Jürgen Moltmann in a nutshell.
And this is the most significant theologian that's written on play that I know of, and readers, if you know, or listeners, if you know of someone else, I'm sure others mention it in passing at places, but this is the most focused, notable work. There have been some books come out recently about history of games or philosophy of games, and so game theory has been of interest, but I don't know of a theologian that's explored it. Now, play was popular among the German philosophers and Romantic period, the thinkers back in the 19th century, Schiller and others, but they are thinking more of as play, and even I think Moltmann's thinking more of childlike play and joy and wonder. I don't know if they're speaking of organized gaming. That's one question I have with this book.
Right.
Like, is he thinking about chess? Has he played Monopoly at this point? Probably. This book was
been around for a long time.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to ever reference an actual game, kind of. Maybe he's just thinking of Duck, Duck, Goose type childlike games.
Yeah. There's you're right. There's Schiller has this great quote about we're never more human than we are when we play, and so like you said, you kind of find these little snippets of statements about play and the value of play. I remember there's a little bit something in the writings of Dietrich Bonhoeffer too, but it seems like he is by far the most famous, as you said, theologian who has an extended treatment on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not just mentioning it in passing. He is kind of he's which maybe to get into the subject, if that's okay with you, are you okay if we dive in, Kevin? Is that
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll find out.
Okay.
If I'm not going to blink like this.
Okay, I will look for your blinking. That was very subtle. It was very subtle. For those of you who are listening and not watching the video, Kevin just did the most amazingly subtle blink. It was
right. It's very different blink.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Schiller, I think Schiller's discussion of the value of play is part of a larger work on aesthetics, which I have never read, but I've heard about. But that's a theme that that Moltmann talks about. That early on in this work, he contrasts the world of what he says is theology and ethics with what he calls the world of faith and aesthetics. Right? Mm-hmm. So theology, systematic thinking about God, ethics, systematic thinking about how we should live our lives, versus faith, which is a lot harder to define, maybe like trust in the divine, and then aesthetics, kind of thinking about beauty and things like that. And Moltmann seems to be pretty down on the world of theology and ethics, and a pretty big proponent of the world of faith and aesthetics. And I thought that was really interesting, and I'm not quite sure what to do with that, to wrap my head around that. Do you have a sense, Kevin, of why is this so important for Moltmann to distinguish between theology and faith, ethics and aesthetics, and why is he down on the first and proponent of the second?
Yeah, I'm no Moltmann expert, but my guess of what's going on is that lingering issue of how is religion relevant in modern times and theology? Because we've got science, we have hospitals, we have doctors. In general, people talk about miracles, but we don't expect miracles like the ancient world did. We don't experience them. We don't talk about demon possession unless it's in a movie. So if you read your New Testament, Jesus is casting out demons, and so it's a very different world than the world we live in. And And with those changes, religion and theology, what's its role in the world? And one answer is ethics, that religion and ethics, right? So the religious brings about the ethical. And that's a way to argue for the place of religion, that religion makes people more ethical. It bonds them together. It gives them a sense of purpose and why you should be ethical. So that's one place for religion, but Moltmann wants it to be bigger than that. So I think in the larger issue, it's a question of identity, of why be religious and what's the place of religious thinking, meaning theology. Is it just to have better ethics? Is it to try to go back to the ancient world of demon possession? You know, the Pope's Exorcist. That's that movie on Netflix that
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, if you see the first Exorcist, which is terrifying, that's one of the themes of that movie is, as I see it, that science can't defeat real evil. It takes religion. Like
Interesting.
It takes a religious. So you could see that movie or read that book as an argument of trying to say there's a place for religion, which is the reality of evil. I think Stephen King personally has said things like that because of his belief in how evil the world can be, there must be a God.
Interesting.
Right? So that's one possibility of how religion exists in the modern world. Is it about ethics? Is it about good and evil? Or is it about creation and beauty and play? And that's where Moltmann is settling, is that third option.
Interesting.
What do
That's
you
such
think?
a good
What are your
analysis.
thoughts?
I love that, Kevin. No, thank you. I mean, my thoughts are
thanks.
just going off of yours because you really helped to clarify that for me. Yeah, so it's almost as if maybe Moltmann's in this world which is largely our world today too, where people say, you know, what's the point of religion, right? We look at the Bible or whatever holy text we may be using based on whatever our faith tradition or religion may be, and we say, oh, this is all this superstitious, supernatural stuff, right? That doesn't that really relates to the real world anymore. And so one response to the church or the community of faith is to say, well, okay, it's not really about the supernatural stuff. It's about ethics. It's about trying to decide how to live your life. And so it's kind of it's a way of trying to sell faith to the world, right? Sell religion to the world. That's so interesting. And you know what it reminds me of is, to be relevant, what you said. What that reminds me of is this really one of the most haunting things I've read is this passage in a book called "In the Name of Jesus" by Henry Nouwen. It's a very tiny book on Christian leadership, and by the way, this isn't just an exclusively Christian show. We whatever your religious tradition or lack of religious tradition, you are welcome here, and we're glad that you're here. That just happens to be our tradition. But there's this book on Christian leadership called "In the Name of Jesus" by Henry Nouwen. It's very, very tiny. I really like it. I recommend it for kind of spiritual leadership. Yeah, but he says that one of the greatest temptations for a Christian leader, we might say in this context, a leader of faith or spiritual tradition, one of the greatest temptations is the temptation to be relevant. Mm-hmm. And that has haunted me because on the one hand, it's like, well, yeah, of course, you know, we want the world to think that religious matters are relevant and matters of faith are relevant. But on the other hand, maybe there's some danger to that too, you know, and that's, I guess, what I hear Moltmann saying here, that when we try to sell faith to the world, maybe we get into some dangerous territory and we make it less than what it is. I think maybe how I've come to have some more of a sense of understanding what maybe Nouwen meant by that is that it's when we feel like we always have to be needed, or when we feel like when we're trying to nurture a sense of dependence upon us, right, ourselves in the world, you know, to say, well, clearly you need this or that, or you need, I wonder if that's kind of the danger of that temptation of relevance, which I hear Moltmann addressing as well. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. That It's a great quote, the danger of relevance. That's a real temptation. On a certain extreme, you have to be relevant. You can't have your, or it's very difficult to have your church service in a language people don't speak, for example.
Right.
So on a certain level, you've got to be relevant. People expect air conditioning. They expect to have a bulletin or have some sense of what's going to happen in the church service, or use a screen or something. So there's a certain level of, we have to be relevant in order to be heard. But
Exactly.
there is a point where you go too far, and I think that one of the dangers is, if religion's only about ethics, well, then just be ethical. Why be religious?
Right.
Right. So at a certain point, if you're too relevant, there's nothing distinguishing about you, and then people just shortcut you anyway. Or if you want to look and act like a local civic club, well, then they're just going to join the local civic club, or so there's got to be something distinctive about religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while Moltmann, I don't know that he's saying directly here that this is what will save religion, but I guess he's saying this is a deep component of religious expression, is a understanding of play. Is that fair? Because he's going to talk about God's creation as an act of play, that where we're fully human and more participating in God's life is when we engage in play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we aren't connected to those things, then we fall into the trap of working hard to play hard, which means we just kind of work hard.
Right. Finding our value then in work and achievement.
Right.
Which
and even
just,
play becomes an act of work, which is a danger.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're really playing just so you can work better on Monday.
Yeah.
So he's really trying to avoid that. So yeah, he's saying this is a category that religion is overlooked, is thinking about beauty and what is unnecessary.
Okay.
What is superfluous.
So that seems to be a good
yes
transition to this next section. So so lead us through, Kevin. What is Moltmann talking about here in these first few pages of 15 through 25, pages 15 through 25?
Yeah, it's complicated, but I read it as that God is a God who creates and creates freely, and so this is a deep thought in, I guess, all Abrahamic religions, that God created the world out of nothing. So God freely chose to make a world that God didn't need to make. Like, the world doesn't have to be here, and God didn't need the world. And yet God chose to create it anyway. Well, how do we understand that? It's not an act of work, because if it was, it'd be like, oh, I've got to punch a clock, and I've got to make some daggone birds. And
why do I have to make the world?
I have to make, exactly. Oh, I'm so tired of making this world. The fjords are just getting on my nerves. The fjords in Finland?
Norway?
Fjords.
Probably, maybe some.
I don't even know how to say the word, and I'm God. Fjords. There's so many fjords. It's getting on my nerves. So yeah.
So many fjords. Yeah.
So little time. Oh wait, I'm God. It's fine. I do have time. But it's boring. So the scriptures do not refer to God in that way, of God feeling like God had to. It's not an act of work. So what is it? And really interesting way to read it is it's an act of play, that God freely creates the world and makes it as a sense of joy. And we have not only that in Genesis 1 and 2, but then in Proverbs 8, describing wisdom, which is the strange personification of the book of Proverbs. It says, I was beside God like a master worker, and I was daily his delight. This is wisdom speaking.
Yeah.
Playing before him always. And the word there really is playing.
That's awesome.
Because I did a little research. The Hebrew word, it gets translated sometimes in some translations as rejoicing. Because the translators probably thought playing sounded wrong in this context. But the word there, at least in the normal dictionaries for ancient Hebrew, is play.
That's so interesting.
I thought
Thanks
that was
for doing
really
that
interesting
research.
too. Yeah, their discomfort with that.
So like the translators thought. I mean, I'm just kind of hypothesizing, but maybe that the idea of rejoicing in God's presence is a little bit more suitable to
It's
the
more churchy, right?
the
It's more
divine
appropriate
presence
for the,
than playing. Yeah,
yeah, we don't play at church.
No,
We're very serious.
It's terribly serious, which he gets into seriousness too in a little bit.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah. So, and what struck me about that section that you just summarized so well for us, Kevin, is the similarities with a previous book that we've considered on this podcast, The Grasshopper by Bernard Suits, where it also talks about the unnecessity. Is that a word? Unnecessariness.
Just
unnecessity.
the necessities. The necessities.
The little unnecessities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Call me Baloo. But because he also, Suits says that the essence of play is, the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. We need that on a T-shirt. We talk about that so much.
Ooh, we do. And you're right. I forgot that is the same word. And it's voluntary, which means it's unnecessary. You don't have to do it. You choose to do it. And then it's unnecessary obstacles. It's double unnecessary.
Right. Which is why I think Moltmann says that creation is God's play, right? Because like you just said, Moltmann says it wasn't necessary for God to make the world, right? This was it was not necessary, and yet God did it, right? And not out of a sense, as you said, of work, of obligation. He also says it wasn't out of a sense of like God needing to do it for self-fulfillment, right? Like this was,
Right.
oh, I need a purpose in life. I'm going to make creation, because otherwise I'm
Right.
just God and I need somebody. It was just purely out of delight and joy and goodwill, right?
Yeah.
And pleasure. And
The council of God says I need to get a job, so I'm going to make something because they're judging me in the council of gods.
God,
Which
why
would mean
don't you-
that God's not God because there's a council. Like, yeah, God doesn't work for anybody.
Right.
It's a lovely notion.
Yeah. So it's very, so Moltmann says that creation is God's play, right? Creation is God's, out of sheer delight, desire to overcome an unnecessary obstacle, right? Voluntarily overcome an unnecessary obstacle. But Moltmann adds something to that, to Suits' definition, which I thought was interesting. And it's, correct me if maybe you read it differently. And I don't think Moltmann came up with it. I think he's quoting Huizinga here, the Dutch philosopher who wrote this book called Homo Ludens. But I think he says that play and creation is both unnecessary and meaningful.
Yes.
And I thought, so he adds this element of meaning that is not in Suits' definition, right? Unless you see the overcoming obstacles part as meaning. But he adds this element of meaning that play and creation are both unnecessary and meaningful.
And how would you define that meaningful? What is meaningful about it?
I was thinking about that. Yeah. And I'm not sure I've got a good definition, but I was thinking like, well, is that true? Right. And so I was thinking like, so I kind of see all this through the lens of playing games, right? Playing board games, and so I asked myself, well, do I find that meaningful, right? Do I find it meaningful to sit down and play Caverna or, Brass Birmingham or Just One or whatever? And at first it was like, well, no, it's not meaningful. That's why we do it. But then I realized I think I'm wrong. It is meaningful, right? And that it is why I do it. Because then if it wasn't meaningful, I wouldn't be doing it. I don't think.
Ooh, right.
I don't mean that as
You're not getting paid to do it.
a pat
You're not
on
being
my back.
told to do it.
Right. We wouldn't. I mean, it's true for all of us. We wouldn't do it if we didn't find some meaning in it. And then that got me thinking about Viktor Frankl, who wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay.
And
I was laughing that you're name dropping so many awesome
I don't
names.
mean to be name dropping. I'm sorry. That
No,
got
you
me
have
thinking
to. You
about
should
Kevin
own it.
Taylor.
It's just funny.
But Viktor
Thinking of
Frankl.
Flavius Maximus and his comment in the 3rd century. Who took my screwdriver? Anyway, no, I'm sorry. I just hijacked that.
No, it's a good
Viktor
question.
Frankl.
Viktor Frankl was, was in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II of Jewish descent, and he wrote this powerful book on his offering reflections on his experience in a Nazi concentration camp called Man's Search for Meaning. Today we would say maybe, humankind's search for meaning or something like that. A little bit more inclusive language. But what he argues in there is that our primary drive is to find meaning in life. The primary drive of human beings is to find meaning. Even when you're in a concentration camp, you're trying to find meaning. And so if he's right, then of course we're trying to find meaning when we play games. So maybe Moltmann is right that the essence of play is that it's unnecessary and it's meaningful. So you were asking, so what does that mean for it to be meaningful? What is the meaning of meaning?
Yeah, I think on one level, and I'd have to read it more closely to guess what he's after. The meaning is partly just within the game, that these things mean something in the game. So the dice become the arbiters of how far you can move in Monopoly, right?
Right.
And so if you had those dice in the cup holder of your car, they don't mean anything. But in the middle of the game, they have meaning because you're like, oh, I hope I get doubles and this and that happens. So a certain bit, the meaning is constructed by the game. And I think that's where Suits would agree, and he's trying to build that as well, that the obstacles have a certain meaning, that you... In golf, you can't just pick up the golf ball. You have to use the little stick, right? So that has meaning within the game. But outside the game, if you found a golf ball, you would not go get a stick. You would just pick it up. Like, oh, golf ball, right? So there's that level. But I think you're right, too, that it also has meaning in the sense of it's helping us discover our identities as creatures that are meant not to work, but to enjoy a world that is beautiful and to enjoy one another and to enjoy God, as Moltmann cites from the famous Westminster Catechism.
Yeah.
It's a statement of belief. Westminster Catechism of 1647. The purpose of being human is to glorify God and enjoy God forever. And Moltmann connects that with play. You're right. I think that the meaning ties into our identity.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is why we like to play, and it's why we interact with children with play, and why adults like to play games.
May I ask, how would you kind of connect that Westminster Confession with play? To enjoy God, to delight in God and enjoy God forever? How do you see that connected with play?
I'd have to spend... I'm just guessing what Moltmann's after when he cites it, but I think he's saying that enjoyment, he's connecting that with what God did when God created the world. God said it was good. So yeah. God did something that was not necessary. God only did it for its pleasure.
Yeah, yeah.
And games are something that are unnecessary. We only play games for pleasure.
Right, right.
They don't achieve anything in this world. So
yes.
They're unneeded. That's the unnecessary bit.
And right. And I remember there's somewhere in there where Moltmann says that play, and if we understand creation as God's play, then we could say creation as well. And maybe the intent of the heart of God, if that's not too bold to say, play shifts the focus away from achievement to being. Right? That the point ultimately of play and of creation is not achievement, but being. He talks about this Dutch biologist. I know that you notice as well, who talks about the I think the demonstrative value of being. That there's a value in being that comes prior to anything we will or will not achieve in life. Right? Mm-hmm. And because of that, then Moltmann has this great quote where he says, well, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, seeing the meaning of life only in terms of being useful inevitably leads to a crisis. Right? That if we see the meaning of life in terms of being useful, that will inevitably lead to some sort of crisis of life. And that really struck home, and I think that's really...
Did it?
wise. Yeah, yeah.
You want to unpack that a little, or?
I'm not sure that I fully understand it myself. I guess the first thing it makes me think of was at this retreat last week, somebody brought up the I think in her phrase and her wording, kind of the sin of ableism, right? That this the sin of thinking that really our value as a human being, our value as a person, really is only in what we can achieve and what we can produce. And she says, well, what does that say about a person who, for whatever reason, comes to a place in life where that capacity to produce in the world's eyes becomes limited or ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying that person that no longer has value, has, and that's, I mean, I find that as a great, great haunting question. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I'm just going to admit it because I want to be honest and vulnerable with you, Kevin, and with our listeners too. I had a season of my life where I just felt like pretty pointless, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm and one of the things that got me out of that was this realization that I could be useful,
Right.
in different situations. And so on the one hand, if I'm being honest, that did bring me comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say that because I'm contradicting this truth that I also
good.
believe in,
That's a
that our
very
value
interesting
is
point.
independent of our usefulness. Yeah. But if I'm being honest, I found comfort in that moment.
Yeah.
And I don't like admitting that, but I guess I'm just trying to be honest. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Or
No, I think that's a brilliant insight. To be honest, if I'm being honest, that when I am feeling malaise or depressed or whatnot, getting something done is often a really great way to deal with that. If
Yeah.
As well as when I feel good about a day, it's because I can check off the things I've done.
Right,
So
right.
does that mean we've fallen for the trap of usefulness? Like it's so ingrained in us that it's just going to be hard to get out? And that may be true, but I would get fidgety if I just played games all the time. Like it sounds great, but I think I
Exactly.
would also want to, I'm not sure I can do that.
Right, right,
So it really
right.
does come down to a balance that I want to do something that impacts our world usefully. I do want to be useful, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also know that that needs to be balanced by games and enjoying just existing, as you're saying, because at some point usefulness ends, and then what do you do?
Right, right. I mean, we're doing a podcast on religion and board games because we think it's useful, right? I mean, it's kind of,
Ooh,
I mean, you know
right.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's almost like we need different categories. I almost feel like we need kind of to differentiate.
Hmm.
Like usefulness has a role, but its role is not giving us ultimate value. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
maybe that's the thing. Maybe there's, um, I don't know. I don't know.
But I think you're right. We do need, there is a primary need to be useful. That's like vocation, your calling.
It's a
But
tough thing to figure out.
it's a tough thing to figure out. But if your whole life is your vocation, then that's where Moltmann says then you're going to get stuck. I mean,
Right.
you can't take your satisfaction from that. Yeah, you're right about the categories. And one thing I loved in the reading that I didn't know is that work, and I assume he's right here, work for the Romans in Latin was, the word for it meant non-leisure.
That's so interesting.
Negotium,
That's so interesting. Yeah.
negotium.
Which gives us negotiate too, right?
I assume it's negotiate. So
Yeah, yeah.
those categories, it's what are you doing today? Well, I've got to do some non-leisure. I've got to do non-play, and then after. So that is what. That's one answer is to be grounded in play and existence and not be grounded in work.
It reverses the assumption, the modern assumption,
Right.
right? Where the modern assumption is the baseline is work, and we take occasional breaks to play, right? But
Yes.
at least etymologically there, the baseline assumption is play, and we occasionally would need to take breaks for that for work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what if you met strangers and instead of asking, well, what do you do? What's your work? What if you said, well, what do you like to play? What do you do? And I
Yeah.
guess we do kind of like, what do you do for fun? What are your
Yeah.
hobbies? And I've met a few people who said, well, I don't really have any. And I'd kind of back away because those are people that are, yeah,
Right.
there's something that's sad, and I'm not sure. Yeah.
At the retreat, there was a pastor who said that he was describing a time when she was doing a job interview as a worship leader at a church, and she said one of the most profound moments of her life in that interview was when the pastor said, "So what do you do for fun?" Right? That was kind of and kind of what you're saying. I mean, what if that was? And she just said that the question was really kind of world shifting for her. It's like, why does that even matter? And then she thought, oh, it does matter, doesn't it? And kind of, yeah.
That Sabbath is supposed to be the first day of the week, which think about. No, wait, hang on. I'm getting confused.
Sabbath is the last day of the week, right? But
last day of the week for Jews, and in the creation story, Christians moved it to the first day of the week.
Right.
And then it got collapsed into the weekend, and I don't really know what it means, right? And then it's just kind of a big mess.
Yeah, and then if you're a pastor, you just say it's, or if you work on the weekends, you just say that's just whenever.
just whenever, yeah.
Which I'm not sure is in the spirit of the concept, but that's another topic, I guess, for another. We need to do an episode on Sabbath sometime. Yeah,
we should.
Yeah,
that would be fun because I have thoughts.
Yeah,
because yeah.
So Moltmann talks about in this. Did you want to explore your thoughts on Sabbath now?
No.
Okay.
But they were bouncing in my head.
Well,
I do think, now that I've said no, I have permission to say yes. I do think there's a weird bit that Sabbath and playing games can be a type of usefulness or productivity because you can become legalistic.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one way to think of legalism is work-based. So you have to be useful. You have to follow, right? And so in board gaming today, which I don't know what Moltmann would make of it, but you are supposed to play we have the list of the hot games, and you should have a copy of these games and know these games and play these games, and you want to get better at the games, and it can be more work than play, ironically.
Right. Yeah.
Like sports. It started out as kids throwing a ball in a hoop, and now all of a sudden it's a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah. Kevin, you and I have been talking beforehand. I'm going through a time just for a variety of reasons where I'm a little bit busier at my work than I have sometimes been in the past, or often been in the past, just kind of for a variety of reasons. And that's given me less time to play games. And I've been feeling guilty about it, right? I've been feeling kind of what you're saying, and it's, that kind of misses the point. If I'm feeling guilty for not playing games,
yeah,
that kind of misses the point. I miss the games. I wish I could play more, but I'm not sure feeling guilty about it is something that
I know what you mean.
Is the right approach.
I feel guilty that I have them, and I'm not. Well, I have more time than you right now. There are games that I haven't played in a while, and I feel guilty about. Well, I should give it away or sell it or do something with it, because why would you own this and not use it? Unless you're just a collector and you want to have them.
Right.
So I feel guilt about having games that I haven't played in a while. So yes, it becomes not about play, but about guilt.
Does it feel kind
Let
of
me
like
ask you this: which ones are tempting you the most right now? What would you play if you could play anything in your set? What would you play?
That's a great question. I really do like Brass Birmingham. I love that.
Do you?
And I think part of it is I like a good, crunchy, complex game, which I already know the rules for. You know what I mean? Kind of like I love learning rules, but at this point, just at this particular moment in my life, I almost kind of want to go back to something that's comfortable, which means maybe not going through the process of learning the rules and just playing a nice crunchy game that I already know. Um, I've I got a copy of Hansa Teutonica about half a year ago, and I really
Hmm.
and I played it a little bit of it. I really like it. I'd love to play that some more. Um,
I don't
and
know that one,
then
but I mean, I've heard of it, but I've not ever played it.
yeah, yeah. And then I just got in the mail the other day. I think something I crowdfunded about a year ago. A GNC um, um, by Carl
The
Chuddick.
people that make vitamins and
Yeah,
supplements,
right. It does
GNC,
sound like that. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Good on
That's it.
Nutrition Corp company.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to move these cubes to add vitamin K to the supplements. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's
And
good.
it's but you have to be careful of not getting too much folic acid. I don't even know what that
Right.
means. No, this is AEGEAN space C, the Aegean Sea, the body of water around Greece, and it's by Carl Chuddick. And it's multi-use cards, and I love multi-use cards, and which is a game mechanism. And I would love to be able to sit down and really play that, but it just
Wow.
yeah. So how about you? What do you, if you could play anything right now, what would you be playing?
I got a game in of Root recently, which I love, but I'll tell you what, I've realized recently there's a trap with Root.
Oh.
There are so many expansions, and you add them, and you want to try the new characters, but then you don't really understand them. And the way the game is, the other people need to understand them too, and it just becomes a whole teaching, learning experience, and not the game. So I think if you really want to play Root, just buy the core game. That's all you need, and just play the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
really have played the heck out of it and find you're tired of those four classic primal critters, then add on. But we're so tempted in the board game community to want to get all the expansions, but it just doesn't work with Root because they're just too dang hard. Because you've got to know this character and the other characters, because you can't beat them if you don't know how they work. But it was still fun. But yeah, we were kind of digging and scratching our heads a little bit. That's been good, though. I do still love the game. And then Frosthaven. We busted that out again recently after a long hiatus. I just love the Gloomhaven, Frosthaven stuff. It really is more of a puzzle. It's almost like Sudoku, because you've got your cards and you've got to figure out when and how to play them within this limited dungeon space
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
a certain time. So it's just such an interesting game because it is not dice driven, and it's not, I don't know. It's not that somebody has the magic elder sword and they can just carve them up. It's more of like coordinating together when to play certain cards at certain times.
Yeah.
What is a game? It's more of a puzzle, and
Yeah.
it's really satisfying.
Hand management, is that kind of the
I guess that's the
mechanism that it's-
mechanism, but I'm thinking, I want to say it was Sudoku, but Sudoku is figuring out an answer to a puzzle. Is there a game, something that's not a board game, but is there something like that where it's all about the timing? Miniature golf? Where you've
Miniature
got
golf?
the big spinning, wheel, and you have to like
have to time it
hit it
just
at the
right.
right time to get it to
get-
curve down.
I like it.
I don't know,
like it.
but it's just such a delightful little game, as well
That's
as then
awesome.
getting to upgrade your character, and you're like, "Ooh, I got a new card." So
I love it. You know,
I don't
you're,
care
you're-
about the other stuff. I mean, I like getting a new character. I like the upgrade, and I like the puzzle of a level. The other
Yeah.
stuff is not, doesn't matter.
one of the many things I love about you, Kevin, is that you're a person who can compare Frosthaven to miniature golf. I think that's
Right.
that's a great it's a great comparison. What other
I just have
podcast
to
gives
play
you
this
that
card at
comparison?
the right time.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. You're talking about expansion. Thanks for sharing. And Root, got me thinking about, we had Mandy Hutchinson on this podcast from the Salt and Sass podcast. Her co-host, Suzanne Sheldon, also on the Salt and Sass podcast, has made the observation, I think, that once she gets an expansion for a game, she's found that she doesn't play the game anymore.
That's so.
And I've kind of found that too. With a few exceptions, I have found that too. Do you find that's true in your life?
Yes, I do. I really do. It's a curse. And I
Why
guess
is
it kind of
that?
makes sense that it's kind of, it's like you fall in love and you're really excited, and then you add something on that makes it not just a simple I'm in love with this game. Like all of a sudden it becomes too complicated.
I
Yeah,
think that's right.
expansions are yeah.
I think that's right. And yet we keep buying the expansions. At least I do. Yeah. So it's like some part of us maybe knows that it changes this thing that we love, and we may not love it as much anymore. And yet I buy the expansion anyway.
I know. Because you love it and you're like, oh,
Right,
I've got to
right.
get the expansion. And we're completists, so most
Right,
of us
right.
want to get the collection. And you're like, well, if I love this, I'll love this other thing. Well, no, it really makes it, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it more complicated. And especially if you have a bunch of games, the chances that you're going to play that game enough that you need the expansion are almost nil.
Right. Right.
Because the truth is, you're only going to play it a few times in the next year
That's right. That's right.
because you're going to play other games. Yeah, that's I had not heard it verbalized that way. That's a powerful way to put it. That if you buy this expansion, you will not like this game as much.
Right. Right.
Doesn't
right.
make any
Right.
sense.
Right. Well, you know who also loved to play expansions, especially of Frosthaven and miniature golf, was Jürgen Moltmann. Yeah, Jürgen Moltmann. He's famous for it. He would buy. I don't know if any of us know. Yes,
Go
all
ahead.
the expansions. All the expansions. He's known for it. He's known for it.
I love Catan. He actually knew Klaus Kuber.
Yes, yes, and got
just
all the
made that up.
expansions. Yeah, it'd be cool to have expansions for miniature golf. It would be like
It would be.
like rocket propelled golf balls or something like that, or yeah.
Drone.
Well,
You
anyway,
could get a drone, so you could.
we can
see
get a
the
drone.
rules.
Yeah,
I have a first edition of Theology of Play that was annotated by Jürgen Moltmann, and in the comp you can see where he was writing it and
Yeah,
underlining some of it. He actually lists his board games. It's really interesting.
that's fantastic.
yeah.
Guard that with your life. That is a precious, precious
The
book.
guy really liked Twister. It was strange.
Was that his number one? I was going to ask what his
That
number
was
one.
number 3, I think, is Twister.
Number three. Number three.
3.
That's great.
I know.
That's great. I should have
I
known.
don't have a
should have
first
known.
edition. I'm kidding.
No.
Yes.
So getting back to Moltmann, I know we're approaching here the end of our
Yes.
episode. Are there any themes from Moltmann, page 15 through 24, that you think we've not gotten into yet that is important to get into?
So this bit that follows up is that we imitate God when we are playing. So I think that's a theme of we are liberated creatures. We are set free because of God's creation and God's intent, but also because of God's redemption. We are liberated and we should act more like it, and we should be more playful and be the child. And we do that by imitating God and having the freedom to play. So it's really right in our wheelhouse, these ideas.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I think something that he lifted up that I hadn't thought of quite in those terms, in terms of how we imitate God through play, is that play / creation, maybe in Moltmann's argument, allows the player or the creationist to engage in, I think, what Moltmann calls self-representation, which I think today we might maybe say self-expression, maybe, but this, like this quote of, like, you talk about the birds, this he talks about this Dutch biologist, Buytendijk, that I know you found this quote, Kevin, but this idea that, this over-the-top extravagant diversity of birds, with colors and songs and things like that ultimately that leads someone to think there's got to be some element of self-expression in that, right? That, in other words, like, birds are singing and colorful, not just to get mates, not just for the function, the function of it, but just to express themselves, right? To represent themselves. And it got me thinking about, I mean, that's what a gift of play that is for us as human beings too, right? That we play just to express ourselves, right? And that there's something inherently good about that freedom of self-expression and self-representation. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wonder what he meant by representation, and I like that you put it as self-expression, and I think you're right. Yes, that we get to have agency and we get to participate and we get to do something that is not work. So, and the birds are not really hunting when they sing. They are communicating or maybe looking for a mate, but it's also a bit unneeded.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're doing it out of joy. I Know Why
Right.
the Caged Bird Sings is
Right.
Maya Angelou's famous book. Nature is more beautiful than it needs to be, and we
Right.
can perceive its beauty. And that suggests God's purposes and our place within them,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is really amazing.
Yeah. Dave Bindewald, a former guest on here, if you listeners want to go back and listen to the episode with Can Games Save the World with Dave Bindewald, he talks about that moment of almost conversion for him when he realized that there was like 200,000 species of beetles in the world or something like that. Or I forget the exact number, but he just talked about what a converting almost moment that was for him. It's like, that's so extravagantly over the top, right? The world doesn't need 200,000 species of beetles, and yet we get it, right? And just what a glorious, playful reality that is, you know.
That's a great way to put it. A glorious, playful reality. It's like a child. We need to receive the kingdom of God like a child, which is a teaching of Jesus. And we do that because God made us that way. And God seems to be someone who does play dice with the universe, right? Like God does play a game in a sense. And I love that Moltmann says we can be absorbed and serious about a game, but transcend ourselves in knowing it's just a game. And that's something that's haunted me through all our conversations is this idea that games are this artificial thing. You open a box, it's got a ritual bit, you set out the stuff, you play it, and then like a good ritual, it ends. Like you put it up in the box and you walk away. Or like the mass has ended, the church service ends and you walk away.
Right.
That's a very haunting bit. So it's important while we're playing, but also it's just a game. And I think that's such a marvelous way to think of sort of being aware that what we're doing is not important, which is what makes it important.
How much of that do you think is a metaphor for like everything?
I think it completely is. I mean, I guess we've got to eat and we need to help make the world a better place, right? But it still should come out of a place of joy. I don't know. What do you think? I guess I'm a little afraid to make it too.
I know. I've been just pondering that too. I don't know the answer as well. You know, all this talk about play being unnecessary, it kind of begs the question, well, what is necessary, right? And is anything necessary? Depending
Justice and goodness and those sorts of things, maybe?
Yeah.
Ethics?
Is it necessary? Or is it?
But we don't do them because they're beautiful.
Is it just a
We do them
reality?
because we should, right? Isn't
Right.
ethics
I guess what I'm wondering, like maybe we think of food as a necessity.
Well, we need sustenance. That is a necessity, or else you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
know.
know.
In the sense that none of this has to be here. So yes, to some degree, the world is not necessary. The cosmos would go along just fine without us. So to that degree, yeah, it is all unnecessary. Correct?
Right.
But given the preciousness of life, it seems necessary that we do things to preserve and help life. Even though we can choose not to, we have free will.
So whether something is necessary or not is dependent upon where we set the bounds of the game. Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
Oh, I think my brain's starting to hurt. And I'm hungry. Speaking of necessities.
We gotta listen to that.
Microphone. Need some more tahine. Have you ever tried tahine spice?
I've tried it with my daughter. Has introduced it to me. She eats it on her watermelon.
It's good.
Yeah.
Cantaloupe.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
There's
I like it.
another spice that I've learned that's Hispanic origins. Mexican, maybe they're both Mexico. I'm not sure. Adobo spice. Have you tried adobo spice?
I don't think so.
It's kind of funky, sweet, and you put it on a hamburger. Delicious. Adobo, not
You put it
adobe.
on a
You think it'd
hamburger.
be adobe like a house. Adobo.
Adobo. Okay, and you put it on a hamburger. Interesting. Huh.
Good stuff. Okay, next time.
I'm excited about next time. As well. Do you want to do you want to reveal it? Do you want me to reveal it?
You reveal it.
Okay. Next time, dear listeners.
Next time.
Kevin and I are going to be talking about. I gotta do the voice. I gotta do a voice for this. The 7 deadly sins of gaming.
Oh. I was trying to do this Dune, the creepy Dune stuff.
Oh, I like it. I like it. The 7 deadly sins of gaming on next episode, and that'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of scary, but kind of fun.
It's kind
Yeah,
of
the 7 deadly sins of
The
gaming.
7 deadly sins of gaming, and spoilers. One of them is eating Doritos. I don't know. I made that one up. We'll see. You have to come back and find out.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out. In the meantime, Kevin, how can people find us?
They can find us at boardgamefaith.com. We're especially active on Instagram. So find us on Instagram. And if you would like to add a photo of yourself with a favorite board game at a place of worship, #boardgamefaith.
Yep. Be great.
Always glad to see those.
And if we can ever be a support for you in your place of worship or wherever else you may find yourself in terms of providing resources for thinking about the theology of play and the intersection of spirituality and board games, please check out any of our other episodes or reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk with you about that as well. We love talking about this kind of stuff.
Info at boardgamefaith.com.
Yep. Well,
okay.
Kevin, thank you so much. Listeners, thank you so much for spending a part of your day with us and being willing to listen through a little bit about this fascinating book. And we are so grateful for you and for your spending time with us. It's a privilege and a gift, and we're grateful for you.
Goodbye, friends. Take care.
Bye, Kevin. Bye-bye.